welcome to part 2 of my Yoga for Beginners workshop series. So in part 1, we talked about just basics of when you first arrive in yoga class, what to expect, and some yoga manners and common props you'll see and things like that. So for this part 2, you might like to have a little towel or blanket nearby. I assume a lot of us don't have yoga blocks at home, but if you do, you can grab one of those as well. So with that, we'll do a few seated poses, like treat this as a little warm-up for class, but I'll place in common questions I hear throughout as well, so it'll be like workshop style. So with that, let's start in a comfortable seat. When you come into most yoga classes, you're gonna either start seated, you'll start in a child's pose, which we'll do later, or you'll start lying on your back. That's, I would say, 99% of the time you're gonna start in one of those 3 postures. So I will say, finding a comfortable seat. If you're brand new to yoga and you're used to sitting in a chair or on a couch or in a car, you usually have something supporting your back. So if you're uncomfortable sitting without some support behind you, A, just know that's super common. B, over time your core strength around the front and the back will increase and you'll be able to sit without that back behind you. And then there are ways we can get a little more comfortable even now. So if you have that block or that blanket or a densely rolled up towel, you can place that underneath and that can take out some of the pressure in the hips. And then you can also play around with how you're seated. So I know this is called Sukhasana or easy pose, and it's not necessarily easy. You can also sit in like old crisscross applesauce from school or extend the legs long, or again, whatever's comfortable. So find that comfortable seat. And then let's inhale through the nose. Exhale, twist to the right. So, big common question. What if the teacher is saying, inhale, do this, exhale, do that? Don't worry about it. Over time, your breath and your movement will start to sync up a little bit more. But for now, just keep breathing. Don't ever hold your breath in order to try to sync up with what the teacher is doing. Inhale back to center. Exhale, twist other side. So even though we're twisting here, put more emphasis on your posture. Really align that spine as you inhale, and then maybe you twist deeper on exhale, but only if that feels nice. It's not like you're not forcing yourself into a twist at all. Next, inhale back to center. Interlace fingers at the top, flip the palms, relax the shoulders, take a bend over to your right. Let the hips stay heavy toward the mat or whatever props you're seated on. Another common question, what if I'm not flexible? Can I still do yoga? Yes. Inhale, center, exhale, other side. Not being flexible is like the perfect reason to start doing yoga because you'll increase your flexibility with yoga, and there's so many variations on every single pose. So you don't have to be scared that you can't do yoga without already being flexible. Inhale back to center. Release. Let's take a few rolls of the shoulders. Inhale, shoulders up by ears. Exhale, slide them down the back. And then release, shoulders down the back. Let's take our Ujjayi pranayama, which means victorious breath. We'll let the eyes close for a moment and begin with an inhale through the nose and an exhale through the mouth, like you're fogging up a mirror on your exhale. Make that ha sound. So if you were in class, your neighbor would definitely be able to hear you, and we might even be able to hear that exhale across the room. On your next exhale, close the mouth halfway through and try to keep that sound. Try to keep everything else the same. The lips just happen to be closed. So you'll start to feel like a real throatiness to the breath, a little constriction in the throat. And over time, your inhale will become audible as well. And if that isn't clicking today, don't worry about it. Just keep breathing in through the nose so that you warm, filter, clear the air for the lungs, and then exhale through the nose or the mouth. Start to blink the eyes back to open. Now from here, we'll move into all fours, but first I want you to take hands together. Just take your hands and spread the fingers as wide as you can, and then place the hands together. So this is like the basics of having having any weight underneath the hands. First off, we want to spread the fingers as wide as they can go, as wide apart as they can go. And then press the hands into each other and notice what parts of the hands are pressing. It should be everything except the center of the palm. So when you're on the mat, same idea. You want to press into everything except the center of the palm. When we feel wrist pressure, again, it's kind of like sitting without something behind us. Over time, we'll get used to having some weight underneath the hands, or having some weight on the hands, I should say. But when we first start out, there's kind of like a learning curve there, or just like getting out of our comfort zone. Sometimes what happens though is we tend to press into this part of the hand, and then that creates a lot more pressure. So if we can just remember if we start to kind of feel that, to just press into the rest of that hand, that can really help. And then to spread the fingers wide, that'll also help distribute that weight. And then last thing is that you're gonna be, when you naturally just place your hands down without thinking, you tend to place them kind of in this sort of way, where the pointer fingers are in at a diagonal. If you were to take and just slightly shift them out so the pointer fingers point straight forward when you're down on your mat, it'd be straight forward, that can already take some of that tension out of the wrist. So spread the fingers wide, press into the whole hand, and then turn the hand slightly out. So with that, let's get into all fours. Wrists under shoulders, knees under hips, and then from here, let's take a few cat-cows. So on your inhale, belly toward the mat, tailbone face up to the sky. As you exhale, round your spine, scoop out the belly, stretch out the back. On your inhale, back to that cow. On your exhale, back to that cat. So continue that with your breath. On your inhale, you're back to a cow. On your exhale, you're back to a cat. So I think it's also important to note that when we're doing movements like this, where you're moving with your breath, the instructor kind of gets you set up and then kind of sets you off on your own to do a few rounds with your breath. It's important to focus really on your breath, your mat, not worry so much about what the rest of the class is doing. It's nice to glance at someone else in class once in a while just to kind of get the gist of what's going on. But for the most part, try to focus in on your own mat and what's going on your own mat with your own practice. And then come back to neutral. So we're going to take and step our right foot. You can stay right where you are, but your right foot is just going to step out to the right so that your hip, knee, heel are all in one line. So sit up nice and tall into that gate pose, and then take right hand on that right straight leg. Left arm comes up and over. So another big question is, what if I can't do a pose? And I talked a little bit about this in part 1, but if you can't do a pose, you can still, number one option is to still try whatever variation of that pose you can do. Take that top hand all the way up and over and land it underneath the shoulder. If this is not a comfortable reach, you can place one of your props underneath, your towel, your blanket, your block, whatever you have. Reach up and over. Take 3 big circles with that arm. So option 1 is to attempt the pose. After those 3 circles, switch directions. Option 2 is to take a resting pose. And honestly, I say those are like the 2 only options in my book. And a resting pose is child's pose, which we'll be in just a few moments. So let's take and just switch it over to the other side. If you're upright and this is comfortable to do it this way, you can just do that. You can bring your hands back down to all fours and switch legs. If this knee is not liking that pressure, then take again your towel, your blanket underneath the knee, or another way to find a nice little padding for the knees is either double up your mat from the side. I can't remember if we did this in part 1 or not. I think we did. Or you can take and just double up like so. This is actually tripling it up this way. And you can find a little extra knee padding that way. And also, if you don't have a mat, it's not a big deal. You can still do the same stuff from home without a mat. So hip, knee, heel in one line, toes point forward. Left hand on that left straight leg. Right arm comes up and over. And then all the way up and over other side. 3 big circles in this arm. So back to what we were saying about if you feel like you can't do a pose, or if it just isn't comfortable that day, or you just don't want to do it, that's fine. Reverse directions. Attempt whatever variation is comfortable for you that day, or just skip out of it and do a resting pose. The one thing I just don't like to see in class, and I think a lot of instructors don't like to see in class, is you just sitting and staring at them. Unless they are actually, if they mention that they're going to demo the pose, so watch me, you know. Unless they mention that, then I would just try it or rest. So resting pose, our basic resting pose is child's pose. So child's pose, we can have our knees together or our knees wide. Knees wide tends to be a little more released for the hips. Knees together tends to be a little more released for the back. Now when we come down, we want to make sure our forehead can actually rest on something. So your forehead, if it doesn't comfortably reach the mat, take either your crossed forearms under the forehead or slide your blanket, your block, whatever it is you have under the forehead. So that way your neck can actually take a break. And then from here, your arms can reach forward or your arms can be down at your sides. So play around with child's pose, see what's comfortable for you. Different variations are going to be best for you on different days, depending on like what areas of the body are tight or sore or whatever it may be. If you're in child's pose and your knees are uncomfortable, if they're uncomfortable because of the pressure under the knee, then take some extra padding under the knee. If they feel like the knee is bending too much, then take some padding in the crease of the knee, and it really doesn't have to be much. It can be like a belt folded in half. It can be, because in yoga we'll use a yoga strap often. Just a little bit of something here can take some of the pressure out of that knee if it feels like it's bending too much. Now here, if this is uncomfortable, if it feels like your ankle is getting flattened out too much here, then you can take and roll up your towel and place it in the crease of the ankle, like right in the front of the ankle here. And that can take some of the pressure out there. So that should help with child's pose. And know that child's pose is there whenever you need it. So anytime you need to rest, even if the class is doing a standing pose and you need to rest, child's pose is there for you. So, and I will be there for you for part 3 coming up next. So in part 3, we're going to start to get more into downward facing dog, and we'll really dive into our sun salutations, our Surya Namaskar A and B. So be on the lookout for part 3, and thank you for joining me today.